Hello and welcome. Today I have my friend Felipe. He is a phenomenal real estate investor, expert in the short-term rental space, and now even has a boutique hotel, which is incredible. So everyone, welcome Felipe. Felipe, why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers here?
Awesome. Thanks, Olivia. I appreciate that. Super happy to be here. Let's see. I started my real estate investing journey about 4 years ago. I did kind of the traditional route, I would say. Started with long-term rentals. At the time, the Burr method was super popular. It was right after the Burr book by David Green came out. And I just fell in love with the process. I love the process of buying an old house and making it look really nice and pulling all the money out and going to the next one. And I liked it so much that we did 15 of those in a matter of 2 years.
Oh my God.
Very fast. But then 2 years later, I was looking at my end of the year bank account, and I'm like, why is this not growing? Like, what's happening here? And sure enough, it's with long-term rentals. In my experience, at least, a roof goes out, and there goes our cash flow for the whole year. Something else happens in one of the houses, and there goes the cash flow for the next year. So we started in 2020, 2022. 2 years later is when we decided to shift our strategy a little bit to short-term rentals, and really never looked back. We bought our first short-term rental in December 21, and a little over 2 years later, we have now 11 short-term rentals and a boutique hotel. So time has
Amazing.
flown.
No, I mean your story is incredible, but so let's actually take it back to before you even got into real estate investing. Like, who is Felipe? How did you get started? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Brazil. I came to the US as an exchange student. My plan was to come, stay here for 1 year, and then go back home.
Oh
And
my gosh. How things
some-
have
I
changed.
know something happened. Junior year in high school, junior year, I was a junior at the time. I met my now wife Julie, and I was like, I say that I never went back, but I don't want to get in trouble with immigration. Like I did go back. I did go back. I renewed my visa, but then it came back next year for senior year, and then college, got a job, and life just happened. That was 17 years ago, and now we have happily married for 10 years. This year was the 10th anniversary. 3 kids, and
Ugh,
yeah, that's
that's amazing. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you know. Oh, well, no, you do know, right? I used to live in Brazil as well. I lived in Brazil for 4 years, and I just I always get along with Brazilians. I don't know what it is. Even when I was in Portugal for 3 months, I could spot a Brazilian from a mile away. I'm like, Brasileiro, there it
there you
is.
go. Me too. It's so funny. So when I first moved to Austin, we live in Austin. There was not many Brazilians at all. Like, it just there wasn't. Their headquarters is here in the suburbs of Austin, and they brought thousands of Brazilians over the last 5 years. But now I go to a grocery store, I know, without personally speaking, without them I just look at them, I see their clothes, I'm like, that's a Brazilian right there.
Completely, the demeanor. I don't know what it is.
I know. I know. The flip flops don't give it away if it's summertime.
That is fair. That is if they're not wearing Havaianas.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. And so, okay, so you started working full time corporate, right? What was your career path then?
Yeah. So I got a degree in engineering, industrial engineering. Some people call it, fake engineering. I guess it's not really engineering, but in my eyes, it is. And my goal, honestly, if you had asked me last 2 years of college or first few years of my career, was I want to be a CEO. Like I want to join a big company. I want to grow the ranks and become a manager, the director, VP, CEO. And honestly, my career went really well. Like I went from intern for a couple of years to my last role. I worked at Peloton, and in between that, I worked at Uber, Amazon, so some pretty of the really prestigious companies. Grew really fast. I was a director of supply chain at Peloton. But honestly, I started to get exposure to a lot of people, to even higher places than that. Senior VPs, some CEOs in some companies. And the more I saw it, the more I realized that's not the life I want. Like
Oh
it
my
just
gosh. Yeah, no, I felt that too. And it's such a weird place to be because I remember going to work and just being like, well, I really don't want their job. And I really don't want my boss's and my boss's job. And you're just like, wait, why am I here?
I
You
know.
know?
I know, I'm a really big. It's a blessing and a curse, but I have a really bad shiny object syndrome. You know,
Yeah.
and to me, when I start to realize that like that shiny object that I was chasing wasn't really that shiny, like so why am I chasing this? Like, why do I want to get promotions? Why, if promotions mean more work, more time away from my family, more travel, which travel is great if you do it for leisure.
It's
If you're doing it
very
for
different when
business,
you're doing it
yeah.
for work.
I know, like exactly. And I remember in 2018, I had just had my second kid. We're living in Pittsburgh with no family whatsoever to support us, and I had to go to China for like a week long trips for 3 different months. 3 months in a row. And I still remember the feeling of getting in that plane and like feeling like I was just dropping like the whole family on my wife for her to take care of the kids and do everything by herself. And I'm like, this sucks. Like,
Yeah.
and that's when I realized I need to look into something else. And quite honestly, real estate, some people like they're born and like really young, they reach that poor dad. They're like, real estate is what I want to do. Honestly, it was not my thing. I wanted a business. I had no idea what the business was. I knew that I wanted to, have a side hustle, had a business. And about that time, that's when I ran across again David Green's book on the Burr method and in bigger pockets, and then kind of went from there. But it was kind of a way to how can this chase, this shiny object that I'm chasing, be more meaningful, something that I actually want to chase versus something I want to avoid.
Totally. Okay, so the few things I actually want to unpack here. So, first one being, I kind of grew up with that experience where my dad wasn't really present for the first 9 years of my life because he
Mhm.
was working to basically shuttle money back to my mom
Mhm.
in the UK because that's where I grew up. And I was born, and my dad was back in Angola, working. And
Mhm.
I don't even have those memories with him at those early ages. And you don't think about that a lot of the time, especially when you're thinking about your career or what you want to do, how much time it could just take away from your family. And you think you're doing it for your family. And obviously you are, and it comes from such a good place. But I knew for me, I didn't want to have that same experience with my kids
Mhm.
in the future as well. So I love that you kind of, came to that realization and were like, wait a minute. You
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. And you know how it is in real estate. We still travel. There's conferences. There's things like that. But you control that. You know how many
Yeah.
conferences you want to go to. You know how what is acceptable for you, for your family, for the support system that you have. When you have a job, it's like especially I was in supply chain. If there was a problem at a vendor in China and there was a problem you found out today, that might mean getting on a plane tomorrow and be in China tomorrow. Like having that control, I think that's what the big change is for me.
No, completely. And so when you started working in corporate America, so at first you were a Brazilian exchange student. Did you become an American citizen then when you got married? Or because I remember when I was in college, I was friends with a lot of other exchange
Mhm.
students. I wasn't actually technically I was an international student because I didn't get my American citizenship until
Yeah.
my halfway through my freshman year of college. But I know for a lot of people that was a big issue with
Mhm.
sponsorships, right? For work. So I guess how did you navigate that?
All right, it's a really good question. I haven't thought about this in a while, but gonna it's gonna unpack a lot of emotions right now.
Come through, come through.
so, so a couple of things. So I remember in college, I went to a lot of conferences, and those conferences were awesome. It's literally would go in, and you would meet with hundreds of employers. And I remember going to one conference my junior year. I already had some good experiences with an internship and all that. I had good grades, and I had like 7 job interviews on the spot. Out of the 7, not a single one of those hired
Yeah.
international students. And it was so demoralizing. It was just like, this sucks. Like, I have the merits, I have the background. They want to hire me. I haven't got an offer until they found out, for whatever reason, they never asked. And I didn't know better at the time. It was my
Right.
first, yeah, my junior year. Yeah, I was pretty young in terms of knowing how the whole system works. But to answer your question, so I did have troubles as well, a lot of difficulties, I should say, initially when I was an exchange student. Most companies will not hire even interns. They say if now or in the future we require sponsorships, you're not eligible for this job,
Yeah.
right? So I end up finding, and it's amazing how things end up working at the end. Like in the end, I end up finding a company, Philips. Actually, Philips. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. It's not super famous in the U.S., but like in Europe, in Brazil, like Philips Lighting, Philips Healthcare, like they're massive. And there was a Philips factory in the city that in the town that I went to college, and
Mm.
they hired international students. So I ended up getting a internship there. It was supposed to be a summer internship, but things went really well, and that became a 2-year internship, my last 2 years of college. And by the time I graduated, not only had a job offer from them already, but also my wife and I got married. My was 6 months before I graduated, so right before graduation, and that gave me the ability to really look for any job.
I love that. Yeah, and that's something people don't really talk about is it is so much harder for international students, especially when they come here and they're like so excited and ready to get going. But there are companies that do hire, and I would hope at least by now that there is some sort of a resource for
I know.
international students in terms of companies
Yeah.
that sponsor. You just kind of have to stay resilient and keep going for it. But I guess how do you feel like that may have shaped the way that you invest now?
I just don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
Like honestly, if it's funny, sometimes I'm in a meeting with someone, and they're like, "Oh, they told me that this can't work." I'm like, "Okay, let's find a way to make it work." You know what I mean? Like, let's
Yep.
find a way to make it work. If 10 people told you no, maybe the 11th will say yes, right? And I have a really good example. Actually, it's one of my best investments ever. It's a house that we bought in Pittsburgh. So do invest in Pittsburgh pretty heavily, even though I live in Austin. And the house is literally a mile and like 1.2 miles to the Steelers Stadium. Pittsburgh is an old town, right? So in these typical old towns, you find a lot of really distressed houses, maybe 2 doors down from a really nice brand new house that was just rebuilt. And at the time, I was part of I had a franchise. Long story short, I had a real estate franchise, wholesaling. We can unpack that a little bit if you'd like. But as part of this franchise, in order to buy the house, you need to get their sign off. Say, hey, yes, this is a good deal. And the 3 quote unquote mentors said, "Don't buy this house." And I'm like, "No, I'm gonna buy this house." Like,
Like,
and they're like,
but like, I
I
think it
know,
makes sense.
right? And they're looking at it, and they're like, "No, this house is in good shape. This house is in good shape." By the way, you're gonna relate to this because I know your design style. It was yes, he had just dark hardwood flooring. The walls were all light gray. The cabinets were all brown. So like as plain as you can imagine.
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, it's already fixed up. You're not going to add any value to the house." And I'm
Oh
like,
my
"You
gosh.
don't understand what we plan to do with this house."
Yep.
So my wife and I know that Julie will be able to do a really good job with the design, and she did. And I was not able to buy the house through the franchise. I had to go outside of it with private money versus using some of the preferred lenders that the franchise gave. And again, it ended up being one of the best deals of my life. It's the house. The cost was $200,000. After remodel was worth about 400,000, and it cash flows like 3 to 4 grand sometimes a month now.
Incredible.
And again, to kind of tie back to your question, I had like 3 people who were like quote unquote experts tell me don't do this, and I'm like, I'm gonna find a way of doing this versus taking your answer because I know what we'll do is much better than you think we'll do. So
No, completely. And it really, it's kind of, I feel like this is an overarching theme of my podcast, but it takes that like inner knowing within yourself and that like
Mhm,
sheer and utmost confidence that you,
mhm,
regardless, even if it may not seem like it works on paper to other people, you see something else that they
yeah,
don't that's going to take it to the next level. I also want to cover, so you talked about how, at first real estate wasn't really the thing that lit you up. It was the whole
mhm.
idea of building a business. So I guess, did you start any other businesses before actually getting into real estate investing or not really?
No, that was the first one. I've always had the desire. And kind of to go back to your question about background, the reason why I got an industrial engineering degree, I couldn't decide between engineering or business. That was the truth. It was like
Me
I
too.
just I just can't decide it. So I went into I went into industrial engineering, and to me, I always liked the idea of running a business. My plan initially was graduate, work for a couple of years, go get an MBA, again, go the whole CEO route,
Same,
right?
same.
You
Very,
know,
yep.
and so I've always liked the idea of running the business. I just initially never thought that would be my business. I thought it would be another company. But then when I started to realize, as I grew and grew very fast in my career, I realized that um, I don't want to be running somebody else's business. I want to run my own. And I still remember I was sitting, very specifically, sitting in my son's room, putting him to sleep one night, and I'm Googling best franchise to buy. Like that's how I found real estate. Like, and out of the like 25 franchises at the time, there was a bunch of real estate ones, including a Home Investors franchise. And to be honest, that's when I started like, okay, Home Investors, what do they do? They're wholesaling franchise, and they help you buy homes. And I had a very demanding full-time job, so I was like, what is the quickest way for me to grow? Is and the franchise at the time was a perfect fit. But again, I found Home Investors and I found real estate when I was looking for a franchise to buy,
Yeah.
not because I was wanting to get into real estate.
No, and I mean, that's the thing. A lot of the concepts are so similar. That's why, like, there's even a surge right now in terms of buying businesses, right? Because it's all
Mhm,
the same concepts, right? And it's so funny that you said that about like the MBA, because that was also my route too. Like
mhm,
engineering, I'll go get an MBA. I actually got a master's in engineering and technology management. But it was so funny. I was watching a video the other day, and it was Cody Sanchez, and she said that the best MBA out there is to actually go and start a business. And I feel
yes,
that so freaking
yes,
hard, because like
yes.
you learn nothing in business school, honestly.
I know.
Most of the teachers like have never started a business themselves, have
Mhm,
never run a business, and you just like learn so much more when you actually go, even if you start like a tiny business that isn't quote unquote successful, but it's your first attempt at figuring it
mhm.
out, like you learn so much more.
I know, and I feel like that's especially true nowadays because let's think about let's go back 15 years maybe. Yes, operations were still there. You still had to operate a business. I'm not a marketing person, but I can just imagine that the marketing wasn't changed as fast as it is today,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I had somebody text me yesterday, one of old friend, and she's like, "Do you have any recommendations for marketing books? For social media marketing?" I'm like, honestly, I don't know if there's any great ones because it changed so fast. Like,
Yeah.
if you write
Yeah.
a book today like, on social media, 6 months from now, there's a good chance it's going to be outdated. you know?
Completely different. And it's like a lot of the, general concepts of marketing and sales are the same, but the consumer is
Yes.
constantly changing. Like the way that the consumer thinks and makes decisions and their delay
Mhm.
time and all of that, which is like because this is something I know I didn't really 100% realize before. It's literally all marketing and sales. Like
Oh
if
my
you
God.
want to
Yes.
actually make any sales, like you got to understand marketing and sales. Obviously, you need
Yeah.
doctors. Obviously, there are these things, but I know when I was growing up, people kind of put down sales and marketing
Mhm.
degrees, right? And I'm like, they're the ones making you any money,
I know. I know. Totally. And to me, it was the same thing, right? Just talking with friends, even before starting a business and all that, I always loved Shark Tank. I always loved like, what
Yes.
is, and to your point, like, what is the product that I'm going to create that's going to get me to Shark Tank? Like,
Yeah.
I always focus on the product. And even when I started my business, I focused a lot on operations. And at the time, it was fine because again, I had a franchise that did all the marketing for me. When I broke off from the franchise and I started to do my own things, I realized that like it doesn't matter if you have the best product in the world.
Mhm.
If you can't get people to see and learn about the product, if you can't sell the product, guess what? You still have no customers. Like
Yep.
and I always told myself, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not a marketing guy. And then for the last couple years, I'm like, I have to become a marketing guy because I
Yeah.
have no choice.
That's how I feel about sales, Like
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna be a salesperson. I
I
hate being
know.
s" I'm like, "That is
I know.
literally the backbone
I know.
of any you don't make sales, you don't make any money." So
Exactly, it totally is, and it, a big mindset shift for me was again when we think about sales. To me, it was again, how do you sell me this pen? Like, okay, let me find a way to sell the pen.
yeah.
But like, even if you don't have a product to sell, knowing how to sell yourself. Again, if you have a W-2, knowing how to sell yourself for a promotion, knowing how to kind of make people see you the way you believe you should be seen. That's all sales. That's all. It just it's everything. It's down marketing. How do people hear about you? And sales wants to hear about you. Can you convince them that this product is a good one, that your service is a good one, that you as a maybe a W-2 employee, you deserve that promotion. It's all sales. Like it really is.
I wonder how, like, if they taught sales more, or if certain schools did when
Mhm.
interviewing for colleges, right? Or interviewing for jobs, how that would totally change the game.
Yes. It should be mandatory. Honestly, like I feel like how we have history. You got to take this many history classes. Everyone should take one marketing class, one sales class at a
Totally.
minimum. Like,
No, completely. And so I guess tell me a little bit more also just about your previous jobs. I know you worked at some pretty like big, cool places that, people would dream to work at. So tell me a little bit
yeah,
just about your experience there.
yeah, a lot of kind of big U turns in that path. Let me So I graduated with an industrial engineering degree. I really liked factories. I wanted to work in a factory. I wanted to build a manufacturing floor and managing operations. So my very first role within Philips was similar to that, right? And then my mentor, who is now an investor with me at the time, he always jokes that people throughout his career would always find the, like, what is the worst team in this place? Let's put him in there and let's see what he does. So at
Oh.
the time it was supply chain, so they put him in supply chain. And I remember him sitting down with me, and he's giving me a whole sales pitch again on why I should join supply chain. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Right? Let's do supply chain. So I migrated to supply chain at Philips still. It was still my very first job in after college. A couple years later, he ended up moving to Silicon Valley, and he was at Uber at the time.
Mhm.
He was working in the self-driving division for Uber, and I was like, "This sounds really, really cool." Like,
Yeah.
let's. And at the time, I knew, because my focus was on factories operations. I honestly, like, I could care less about electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. Like, I just, like, I don't need to know. I did what I needed to do to get good grades in those
Yep.
classes, but like moved on. And then found myself in a extremely technical role at Uber at the time, developing self-driving cars, and it was actually honestly an amazing job to have. I had a bunch of
Mhm.
friends, some of us from Philips, some other people from college, a lot of really close friends. I had some pretty, meaningful roles within the self-driving team. I At one point I was managing all of the sensors, which is really the brains for a self-driving car. The lidar, the spinning thing on top that basically sees the world around the car, cameras, all that stuff. So it was really like challenging, and I found myself learning all the technical knowledge that I avoided in college.
Yeah, completely.
And my career just like went on a huge, like, the accelerated my career in like many, many years, because I end up having some skills that were super desirable by a lot of big companies. And I was early in the industry. I started working self-driving cars in 2017, which really everything started a few years before, but 2017 was still pretty early, in the industry. And everything was going really, really well. I loved Uber, but then a few days before Christmas 2020, Uber sold the division entirely. They
Oh
completely
boy.
exited the building. Yeah, they completely exited the business, and they're like, we're going to do partnerships now. We're not going to develop our own self-driving. And really, my whole team, basically, out of my whole team, like the whole organization, almost 50 people or so, to receive the job offer from the next company, the one that acquired. So good thing is, again, I had some really good skills that not many people in the industry had. So I was able to find a job pretty quickly at Amazon. I worked at Amazon for almost 2 years. And if you want to run your own business,
Yeah.
if I would recommend one company to work for, it's Amazon.
Yeah. Okay, why?
So first of all, it is weird. I'll start saying by that, and I'll explain why. I'll explain. Culture wise, I've never been in such a unique company. So a lot of companies have core values. Every single company has a core value.
Mhm.
I've never seen a company literally live and breathe their core values as much as Amazon does.
What are some of their
Yeah.
core values?
So for example, right, one of them is earn trust, right? And basically they say, in order to work with customers, work with cross-functional teams and so on, you have to earn trust. And the whole interview process is based on these core values. So before you even join a company, you have to learn all of them. You
Mm,
have to kind of think about all the scenarios, and then you actually get to the company, you start working there, and you see that, let's say you and I here, we're discussing a change, and we're trying to decide what the best option is. You think is one, I think is the other one, and during that discussion, I'll be calling out core values during the discussion, like, oh, this is a
interesting.
it's like very embedded into their culture. They're like, oh, it's a way for us to earn trust with our customers.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, customer obsession is like kind of the main goal for them. And Jeff Bezos has a bunch of videos that he talks about that, how Amazon is so maniacally focused on their customers. But basically, again, I'll be like, okay, we're obsessing over the customer by doing this, this, and that. And by the way, we also get to earn their trust by doing so. Basically, again, I'm using those core values to justify
Yeah.
the decision.
Okay, I kind
Now,
of love that though.
it's awesome, and that's why I'm saying that, like, if there's one company I recommend you working for, if you want to start your own business, it's Amazon, because you really see how important core values are in kind of setting the vision and helping the team members decide and make day-to-day decisions based on those core values. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really, really cool aspect. But now, here's where it gets weird, okay? Like,
Okay, tell me more.
so let's say we're coming into the same meeting that I just used as an example. Let's say I'm coming in to propose a new product, like a new feature in a product. Let's say the way that works is before the meeting, I have to write an essay. It's literally a paper. Everyone referred to as a paper, and there's either a 2-page paper for summaries or sometimes longer.
Mhm.
But in that paper, I'm gonna literally justify, explain everything about the feature or the product. Say, here's the market research, here's the feature, here's how it impacts the customers, here's again how this is backed by the core values. And what I'll do is for the first 15 minutes of this meeting, when we actually meet, I'm going to share the document. Everyone is going to go quiet, is going to read the document. So I'm literally sitting
Mm.
in a room and as everyone is reading that document, right? So there is no slides. In a typical company, I would go in and bring a bunch of slides and I would show basically the same content, but instead of presenting in various slides, you're gonna read that paper. And then after the 15 minutes of silence, we discuss the paper. And you're going to say, you know what, here on this paragraph, you said this, I agree, and this is why, or I don't agree with this, and this is why, or
Mm.
ask for more. Like, you said that this is a good feature for the customers, but why? So that's how decisions are made. And again, really, at first I thought it was super strange. I'm like, you're going to really go into a meeting and you're like 15 minutes in silent, just reading a paper. But I never realized how in depth your thought process has to be for you to write a essay about it.
Right, right.
A slide, right? A slide would just be literally 2 pictures. Then you kind of make up the stuff that you say as you go. Like, so again, it's just a very unique company.
Yeah.
Very unique.
I mean, I will say it shows that they're very thoughtful about the
Mhm,
products that they're putting out. And like, I kind of love that, right? Because it is a
mhm.
bit of trial and error, but you do kind of have to go into it with some thought of, is this action? Because I don't know about you, but I have ideas all the time,
Oh
right?
my
Like,
gosh.
I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
going to start this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. And then
Yes.
you start thinking about it more. And then you kind of start writing about it, like maybe writing notes about it. And then you're like, wait, this
Yeah.
is actually a crap idea.
Yeah.
Like, this is so bad. So I like that it forces you to slow down and go through that
Mhm,
process.
mhm. No, absolutely. And I really enjoy my time at Amazon because exactly that. Like, as strange as it was, I was learning so much, I was growing so much. But then at the time I already had my real estate business,
Yeah.
and Amazon is a difficult company to work for. It's a very demanding work environment, which again, if this was 5 years before when all I cared about was my career,
Right.
I would have loved
Thriving.
every second of it. Yeah.
Thriving.
But at the time my priority was how can I continue to grow my business so that I don't need my career, right? So it was a decision that I made that, like, hey, I think it might be time to make a change, and a good opportunity came at Peloton at the time, and I decided to switch. But yeah, Amazon is definitely a very interesting, unique company to work for. There's no doubt about that.
I love that. Okay, so you moved to Peloton and now you have your real estate business going on the side. What was that deciding moment for you to go full into your real estate business?
Yeah, so jokes on me because I was like, I'm gonna go to a less demanding job, and then like 2 months after I started, I ended up start managing a team.
Yeah.
3 months later, I took over another team, and then my role became just as demanding.
Yep.
So if it wasn't for my main focus being growing the business, I would have probably stayed still be at Peloton today.
Okay, so you transitioned basically from your corporate job to your business because your business was really becoming your main focus. What are some
Mhm.
big differences between your life in corporate versus like your life now as a full-time business owner?
So first, I'll tell you what's not different. I still work just as much, if not more, and like, I really, I think everyone thinks, you're gonna reach financial freedom, you can quit your job and retire. Like, at least for me, that has been very different, especially in the stage of where my business is today. Right. So I'll give a little bit more context on that. When I quit my job, when I left my career, at the time, all I had was the real estate portfolio, right? We had long-term rentals, we had multifamily, short-term rentals, and I could just kind of stop there, right? And yes, the workload would have been a lot less, but guess what? With time, with ideas,
Yeah.
you get what's next,
You get
so what's
bored.
next?
And that's the thing. There's always something
Yeah,
else to do.
I know, right? So The big jumps were we did have like four models going on at the same time. So we launched those four all through a partnership. And then my wife and I, it's her business, but I help her kind of on the front end, helping connect with clients and all that. But she started a design business, and I started a management company. I was like dead set on these are my two priorities. Well, the one priority is really growing the management company, the co-hosting company. And then literally a deal fell on my lap about the hotel. And like 3 months later, we closed in the hotel, and now like it become one priority becomes two. Now it's the hotel and the co-hosting. Those are my my,
Yep.
my two main goals. And I have, like you said, 20 other things I want to do that it's on my to-do list. And one big focus for me for the next couple of months, and I already started this transition over about a month ago, but that transition from like doing everything on
Yeah.
your own to hiring, having the funds or the capital to hire, I think is a big step. And then getting people that are better than you at certain things. I tend to try and do everything myself because it's cheaper, because I don't have a full-time job anymore. Like, so it's
Yeah.
like, I'm starting to realize that if I get the right people in, they'll be able to take my business to a much, much farther place than I would ever be able to do it on my own.
And it is that hard, like, catch 22, right? Because usually when you're starting out, you don't have the funds to hire
Yeah.
someone better than you. But the reason that people go so fast, like when you see people go fast, is
Mhm.
because they have people who are better than them, who are bringing them along, and you've got like the A team, right? And so
Yeah.
I know for me, I've been trying to be super conscious about how I'm hiring to make sure I can hire 18 people, but it
Mhm.
comes at a giant cost,
Yes.
and that could be, income wise or salary wise, or that could be equity. And
Mhm.
there's so many different ways to structure it. But if you want to like make something big, you got to bring in the A team. And
You
that's
know,
also not for everyone, too, though.
Totally. And that's totally, and it's a good kind of good segue, because what I'm literally about to post a position today, it's going to be heavily incentivized type of pay. It's going to be a basically minimum wage, but like I'm looking for somebody to come in and help me grow the co-hosting business. And I'm giving a huge chunk of the profit share of that business to that person, right?
Yeah.
So my upfront cost is somewhat under control, but that person could not making a ton of money. But guess
Right.
what? If they do, that's awesome, because I'll make also a ton of money because I also have a good chunk of the profit share. And
100%.
it's kind of like how people play a lot of the sales roles, kind of a commission based, right? Somewhat similar to that, but also incentivizes high performers to like, hey, there's no ceiling for you here. Like if we take this to a huge company, you're coming along. You're getting the benefits of that. And that's just to kind of tie back. That's one thing I learned early on in my career when I worked at Uber. Uber did have a core value that was we're owners, not renters.
Yep.
Because every single person that worked there had some equity. There's not a single Uber employee that didn't have any equity at all. Like as long as you're a full-time employee, W2, like you did have receive some equity. And the idea was, the decisions that you're making, you make them as you are part owner of the company, not somebody who is here, temporarily and just paying rent to be here for a little bit of time. No, like if we do well, you're gonna do well. And that's kind of the big shift for me over the last very recent, I would say, last 3 months is kind of when I started playing with this, and I'm now little by little starting to make more of that.
No, I love that you say that, because the owner versus renter mentality is so different. So even when I hear people complain about anything, like literally
Mhm.
anything, I look at, oh, are you an owner, or are you like, or a renter? The same thing
Mhm.
with like, are you a business owner? Are you an
Mhm.
employee? Right? Your mentality
Exactly.
changes so much, and you don't
Mhm.
realize like when you are an owner, and that could be of property, that could be of a business, that could be of anything. You
Mhm.
now all the responsibility is on your shoulders, and
Yes.
you are incentivized to actually improve versus just coast along and like take the
Mhm.
income and run with it.
Exactly.
And not
Exactly.
try. So I love that. And I hired Anita, who's my best friend, into my business, and now she's like my integrator as well. But like the way that we have it structured is she gets a percentage of the revenue
Mhm.
that we make, and then like later down the line, even like potentially equity split too. And I'm happy to
Mhm.
give that away, because I know that she is gonna like build this with me,
Mhm.
which is incredible. And it's such a beautiful place to be. And we both have like ownership over the company and its success and our students' success and whatever that looks like going forward.
Totally. And it's kind of, yes, you're giving a big piece of the pie, but if you make the pie big enough, it's going to be a huge feast for every
There's
person. Like,
plenty to go around.
exactly. Like, exactly. So that's the goal. Like, how can you find people that are bought in and want to make that pie so big that everyone still has a huge piece, right? I think tech companies are really good at selling the dream. Like, hey, you're gonna come in here, you're gonna come in at a pre-IPO, and you're gonna, you know, cash out really big whenever we do go public, right? And I can see when people, I met some brilliant people over there, and everyone is really driven to contribute, really driven to make that company successful. And initially you kind of look at employees as an expense, and to me it was a huge shift when I started thinking, like, instead of an expense, how can this person help me help make the company better and bigger? And it's a lot easier said than done, by the way. It sounds like
Completely.
it's a lot easier said than done. I'll close it with that.
That is so fair. Okay, I just want to touch on, you're doing all of this with your spouse, you have kids. Like, what is that like for you?
Like, no sleep ever. Like, this it's a lot. Like, so to me, kids are priority, right? Kids and family are priority. That's another thing that sometimes is easier said than done, especially when you have so much going on that you're like trying to find every second of the day to like move on through your to-do list. So it does take an effort to like pause, and put the phone down and say, and I'm really bad at that. Like, I'll be honest, I'm really bad at like putting my phone down, disconnecting entirely. Airbnb killed that for me.
Yeah.
I used to like weekends. I did nothing related to work
Yeah.
ever before Airbnb. Now I spend 10 minutes away from my phone. I'm like freaking out. Like, what's happening? Like, even though I have a team that manages that for me, I'm like, they need me. You know what I mean?
Okay, is that a control issue though? Cuz do they
Yeah.
need you?
It's really good question. For the most part, they do not. There are some times though. For example, we just bought the hotel, right? And for the hotel, we're 2 weeks today, actually 2 weeks exactly that we closed on the hotel. And today, actually, right after this, I'm going to go hop on a phone with them to transition the. I'm picking up all the calls for the hotel for the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. And reason is, how can I train somebody on something I have no idea how it works? I have no
Completely.
idea who is calling, what the process is. You got me hooked to Monday, by the way, Monday.com. So I
Monday
paid
is
it. Yeah,
I should get
I know.
sponsored by Monday,
I know.
honestly. Like the number of people
Yeah,
I've gotten to start using.
I know. So I created a Monday form for intake calls. I created like a tracker. So now I feel confident, like I can hand this off, right? And my team, I am so blessed. Like, my team is so freaking good. Like, exceeded my expectations like a million times over. My operations team. So could they have done it? Yes. Would I feel like a terrible boss, or not boss, or terrible leader, I should say, if I had just like go figure it out? Probably yes as well. Like, I wanted to like give them time to little by little get, absorb the new responsibilities, absorb. They're really good at asking the right questions. If I didn't test it out myself, I would not be able to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I don't think it's purely a control. It's more of a, there are times in the process that you won't be able to have great work-life balance. You have to
Completely.
sacrifice a little bit. If it becomes a constant thing and something that is like for months or years, then no, I wouldn't say years. If it's years, you definitely have a problem. But if it's like weeks, like, hey, the next 3 or 4 weeks are going to be really, really busy. But here's what I'm going to do to start handing it off and kind of get back that balance. I think that's kind of how it works, right? And right now it's a little bit imbalanced, like I said,
Mhm.
but I'm starting to kind of hand it off again, and again, really make an effort to focus on family. Here's an example that absolutely killed me. I went to my son's football practice on Monday,
Yeah.
and of course, I got like 3 phone calls for the hotel for reservations right in the 1 hour. I had no calls for like 5 hours straight, and I'm there. I got 3 phone calls, and the practice is done. And he's like, and I told him how good he did, how proud of him I was. And he's like, Dad, I pulled the flag. He was playing flag football. I pulled the flag, and it was really cool. And I looked at you, and you're in your phone.
Oh,
I
that
know.
breaks my heart.
It does. And I felt like a terrible dad. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
terrible. And like, so there are moments that, like I said, trying to do it all, something will hurt. I always try to prioritize that the family, that my kids are priority. If I said that was the case 100% of the time, like, I wish it was, but sometimes, like right now, when I just bought a hotel, and that this next 2 3 weeks have been a little bit, the last 2 3 weeks have been a little bit crazy. But again, I do see a path where it kind of goes back to normal, goes back to me being able to spend a lot more time with them. And as long as you kind of have that in mind and you're
Yeah.
adjusting as you go, I think is really the big one.
Yeah, and I think it's just remembering there are different seasons. Whenever you're getting started
Mhm.
with anything, the season is gonna be intense. Let's like even buying your first property. Let's say it's your first Airbnb or
Yeah,
even medium term rental. Setting it up. I remember like I was my first property, I was in go mode for like 2 to 3 weeks straight, setting it
yeah,
up by myself. Anytime anyone wanted to hang out with me, I was like, oh yeah, you want to come over and put furniture together and maybe paint my walls?
yeah.
Thank you. That sounds amazing.
I know, and that's it, kind of back to the getting your team in place mindset. If I had bought this hotel 3 years ago, well, I wouldn't, but let's say I did. That was my first investment. I probably would have tried to do everything myself.
Yeah.
In 3 years, it sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. Like it's kind of crazy how much your mindset changes in 3 years. Um, I bought the hotel 2 weeks ago. I have a couple who is living on site, helping manage the day to day. The lady is, she has a lot of customer service experience, sales experience, but also can do a lot of the housekeeping work. Her partner is a handyman, right? So I basically have the day to day of the hotel covered by them two. I have a marketing team that I'm working with that created the website, did all the SEO, did all of the kind of the marketing plan and communication with old guests. So yes, is it imbalance for me today because of I'm still taking phone calls up until an hour from now? But like it could be a lot worse, right? Look at all
Completely.
the things that are already handed off. And like you said, just kind of understanding that those seasons will come and what would you do different next time? I would have 100% tried to do everything on my own, not so long ago. And
Yeah.
now it's still busy, but like I have a lot of people helping me already.
Completely. I mean, that's like, I even think about this podcast, right? So, if a year ago, Olivia would have tried to edit it herself, produce it herself, post it on everything, I instantly, the second I was like, I'm ready to have a podcast, I contacted Will Slickers. He has a
Mhm.
production company for podcasts and everything. I was like, can you do this for me? Because I don't want to do any. And I know it's not my forte. There's no reason for me not to outsource. And it's literally going to be the only reason I'm able to stay consistent with this podcast.
Mhm.
And I know I'm going to be able to stay consistent.
No, totally. And also the accountability that comes with it as well. That's another one, right? If you're the only one doing everything on your own, like, yeah, sure, you're gonna let yourself down. But if you're hiring someone, you're letting somebody else down,
Yeah.
that has another weight, So it really
Yeah.
has. But kind of just to summarize this whole point, one of my favorite books of all time is Who Not How.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not a huge fan of mindset books. I like more practical things, but this book is just incredible. Like that's when I decided to hire my first VA, my very first hire, and that was about a year and 4 months ago. And I was like, why did I not do this a year ago? Like, why
Yeah.
did I wait so long?
Yep.
It's amazing.
Wait, so why don't you like mindset books? Because I love mindset books.
Yeah, yeah. So I like getting to the end of the book and saying, here are the things I'm gonna do to
That's
change,
that
right?
engineering mind. It's the engineering brain in there.
It is. It really is. I'm such a numbers guy. So such a let me put a project plan for this kind of like and
Yeah.
versus like I'm already I'm very lucky or blessed to say like lack of motivation is not one of my things. Like
Fair.
it's the opposite actually. I think again shiny object syndrome kind of I see as the opposite. I'm always like motivated because I'm looking for the next thing. So books that I like, for example, that have made a huge impact in my life, my business. It's Who Not How. Another one is Profit First. Again,
Mm-hmm.
something at the end of it, and I was like, these are the changes I need to implement today. You know, Mike McCullough, the same author, has another one called Clockwork,
Yep.
which is about how do you build a business that works for you versus you being so a slave of that business, really.
Yep.
So again, I like those books that I get to the end that I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do, right?
Okay. Fair
I've
enough.
read I've read a few mindset books that I'm like really gets me pumped up and kind of ready to go, but I feel like it has to have something additional on top of it, right? Good example, Grant Cardone. Either you love it or hate him, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Grant Cardone, his book 10x. I read the book before I even know who he was. I was recommended the book. It was a couple years ago, and it is mostly a mindset book. But one thing that stuck to me, that's like now, especially running the business after 3 years, I really resonate with is he says it's easier to 10x your business than it is to exit. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what does that mean? That sounds crazy. Before you 10x, you have to 2x, like.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
he's like, but that's again, that was a huge mindset shift for me. There's like, if I'm trying to do everything on my own, Can I 2x it? Probably. Can I 10x? There's no way. Like
Yeah.
I have to think differently. I have to get the right team, the right systems. I have to look for a new industry,
Yeah.
whatever. So like that is a good to me mindset book that also gave me something very specific that I can use on my on my day to day, on my planning and so on.
Completely. That's like early. I actually have it right here. This book, 10x is easier than 2x, if you're watching the YouTube channel, and I will put it in the show notes. I 100% feel that book changed my mind. Like, it blew my mind
Yeah.
earlier this year. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I love
Especially
that.
in real estate specifically, right? You're always thinking of what it's one house at a time. And if you get stuck in that mindset, there's so many business that you can have on the side that will help you. There's two types of real estate. For me, it's the management company, the design. For others is building a community and a coaching. Like there's different things, but like you don't have to do one and the next one. Like you could be doing, what shift do I have to make in my business that will allow me to grow much faster than I would if I just doing one house at a time. Like
Completely. And I mean, that's where the boutique hotel comes into play, you know?
I know, I know.
So we're right at about the hour here, which I feel like we could have a whole other podcast episode because there's still so much to talk about. So maybe got to have you back later in the year.
Absolutely.
But I end every interview with these 3 final interview questions. So number 1, what does your ideal perfect day look like?
Waking up, listening to the ocean with my wife and kids, and walking out and literally stepping on sand and listening, and be able to sit down in the morning with a coconut, later in the day with a beer, and just literally do nothing besides enjoy the sand and the ocean. Like
Oh,
that is so calming to me. Like I think that growing up in Brazil, we lived on the coast. I just love being by any type of body of water, and the beach is definitely my favorite.
I love that. And question number 2 is, what is your mantra, if you have one, or just like a philosophy you live by?
Yeah, I think for me is don't take no for an answer. I've had that so many times. I cannot tell you how many times throughout my life, even when I was an exchange student that I said I wanted to come back, I've had 3 people tell me you can't get the visa, you don't have a place to live. I ended up finding a new family, by the way. Like we didn't get into that. Like so, not taking no for an answer, and to people close to me, they can be kind of annoying
Yeah.
because my wife is like, "I just told you we can't do this," and I'm like, "Why not? Tell me more." Like So to me, is really like not taking no to an answer and being persistent. And I think that's why we've been successful in business, because I think 99% of success in business is not giving up. Like you are going to have difficult times, bad things will happen. But instead of like, okay, this bad thing happened, I'm going to stop, is okay, how can I either fix it or how can I learn so it doesn't happen again?
Completely.
So that's definitely how my whole life has been guided by that.
No, I love that. I love that. That's huge. Okay, and question number 3, what does wealth mean to you?
It means having the freedom to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, and with who you want to do it. And I say that because I walked away from a very nice compensation package in my tech in my tech career, right? But I didn't have the freedom to do those things, right? If I had to get on a plane and go somewhere else, I had to do it. And to me, being able to, even though it may mean less money, and money helps. There's no question about that. Money helps, gives you the ability to make those choices. But you could be very wealthy from a money perspective and still not have that freedom. And to me, that's just not wealthy. Wealthy to me is a combination of yes, financial, but family, faith, health is super important. I'm huge in like thinking about how can I, with all this stuff happening. I woke up at 5, went to bed last night at 12:30, woke up at 5 to go to the gym, because like if I don't focus on my health, I feel like other things slide. You know what I mean? So
Completely.
yeah, I think wealthy is a lot more than just money. It's a combination of all those different aspects of life.
Completely. I love that. Well, this has been awesome, Felipe. If anyone wanted to reach out to you, maybe about Airbnbs, maybe about hotels, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yes. So in all social medias, invest with Felipe. It's pretty easy. And then Felipe Caldeira. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for listening to Wanderlust Wealth Show. Now, don't forget to follow the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you love this episode, it would literally mean the world to me if you shared this with a friend or a family member, or literally like anyone off of the street. Like right now, go ahead, share it so you don't forget, or post it on social media and make sure to tag me. I love seeing what you're listening in on and what you resonated with, and I'm just so freaking thankful for you. I'm so freaking excited for you. I love you, and don't forget, life really doesn't have to be hard.